Over the last week, ArenaNet has been dropping some very intriguing images, what look to me like teasers for elite specs. Maybe you've seen them too. There's even a tropical looking background in the mix, which has a lot of people speculating about the next expansion setting. With all this hype spinning around, I figured it's the perfect moment to just share my own thoughts on where Guild Wars 2 stands, what these new elite specs might be, and why, at least for me, this next expansion really needs to come out swinging. Now, this one expansion per year model ArenaNet has been rolling with has been a mixed bag for me. And I've definitely noticed a fair amount of people in-game or on Reddit saying the same, that the smaller content and expansions just don't feel quite as exciting. And the lack of new elite specializations certainly doesn't help. Seems to be a sticking point for a lot of people, and I know I am missing some new ways to play the game lately. So in comes these elite spec teasers. And here's what I think, and this is all wild speculation. I think that Bardic style image is definitely a new Mesmer elite spec. Bard vibes just scream illusions and support magic, and that's always been, Mesmer's turf in Guild Wars, right? I wouldn't be shocked if it's literally called Bard, but there may be some sort of, in-game lore reason for a different title. There's also this helmet that, to me, looks like it could go to either Guardian or Warrior. It looks a lot like the Paragon class symbol from Guild Wars 1, but I could also see it being a new Paladin style elite spec, something more heavy and supportive for either Guardian or Warrior. And then there's that weird swirly icon. I keep seeing people say it could be an Elementalist, but if the Bardic icon is a light armor class, then my money would be on this being for a medium class. My off-the-wall guess is that it's some kind of wild engineer spec. Maybe something like Asuran and Sciency. The logo kind of reminds me of an atom, honestly. And I've been enjoying the speculation, but I'm definitely not a numbers guy, so the sheer amount of new trait line combos and weapon possibilities is honestly a little overwhelming. If we really are getting 9 new elite specs, that's a ton of moving parts for balance dropped in all at once. The odd thing to me though is what weapons would go with these. For Mesmer Bard, I could see a Warhorn being added for them. The possible Paragon class, Warrior and Guardian already have shields and spears, which were Paragon's thing. If we continue with their whole leadership style, I would lean on it being more a Warhorn added here as well, even though that would duplicate Warhorn editions. But Warrior already has Warhorn, so I would imagine that would go to Guardian if that whole Paragon is the correct guess. As for this engineer icon that I'm guessing on, I have no clue, man. Maybe Focus? I don't know. Personally, I don't think there's any question that new elite specs, balance, headaches, and all would breathe a ton of life into the game. At least that's how I would feel. Even though Janthir Wilds and Soto brought some great quality of life stuff like easier Skyscale and Warclaw unlocks, homesteads, legendary armor, and backpack routes through PvE, and weapon master training, it's very hard to deny things have felt a bit stale lately. Other MMOs I've played like FF14 and WoW toss in entirely new classes pretty often. In Guild Wars 2, we got Revenant with Heart of Thorns, and that was a long time ago. Elite specs have kept things fresh along the way, but they just aren't quite the same as getting a totally new class to level up and explore. Now that said, 9 new elite specs to play around with sounds like a blast, especially if ArenaNet keeps up their habit of pairing them with new weapons. I've seen a few people theorizing about new classes, but honestly, dropping 3 brand new classes at once would be completely wild. I don't think that's happening, but hey, I'd love to be proven wrong, ArenaNet. I would love you to surprise me. But while I am excited about the idea of new elite specs, I do worry about the overall drop in content lately. Now, someone recently commented on one of my community posts saying, I really don't want a new elite spec. ANET can barely release good content. Elite specs will be hype, but the content will still be trash. Now, I don't fully agree with this. I've honestly enjoyed a lot of the last 2 expansions, but I do get where they're coming from. But here's the thing, I'm pretty sure the people designing elite specs aren't the same folks writing the story or designing the levels where a lot of my issues stem from. So I'm not really that worried that elite specs will somehow take away from expansion content. For me, the amount and quality of content has been mostly fine for the money I've spent on these. But I would be lying if I said I wasn't let down. By the way, both Soto and Janthir Wilds have now ended. For some reason, the endings just land with a bit of a whimper and not really a bang. I don't dislike the Janthir Wild story. Actually, I was pretty invested for most of it, especially early on. It's been pretty hard, I think, to follow up on something as epic as the End of Dragons finale. We closed a decade-long plus storyline at the end of that expansion. So honestly, even the best written story would be pretty hard to come up to that same level of payoff. But that being said as well, there's no doubt that compared to other living world and expansion endings aside from End of Dragons, the finale storyline portions just don't have that same tension and epic level of combat. And you know, like I said, level design has been a mixed bag for me. Inner Nyos was a choice, and Lowland Shore was gorgeous, but Janthir Sintry really felt a bit undercooked. I really liked Mistburn Barrens and Bava Nisos, honestly, but I know not everyone agrees with that opinion. The common thread I've felt is that both expansions started strong and just kind of fizzled out by the end, and I can't help but wonder if ArenaNet's timeline is just too short for the vision that they have. I'm even more inclined to believe this because they have delayed the next expansion, which I am taking as a good sign. They're giving themselves some more time to get it right. All of that leads up to the fact that for me, this next expansion is really the last big test. Am I going to quit Guild Wars 2 if it doesn't deliver? Probably not. I've bounced in and out of this game for years, and I always end up back due to the horizontal progression and how easy it is to just come back into the game. But if this next one disappoints me again, I doubt I'll be waiting on the edge of my seat for the next expansion. You know, I'll just check out the new stuff as it comes and enjoy what I can when I can, but spend a lot more of my free time elsewhere. Now, despite my gripes, I do see ArenaNet making real progress lately personally. The quality of life changes as of late have been huge. New open world legendaries, better Warclaw and event design, and a real willingness appears to be here as far as listening to feedback. I mean, they changed the zone introduction based on the feedback in Soto, so I can only hope and assume part of the reason that this next expansion has been delayed is because they are listening to feedback. You know, making MMOs is hard, and no developer can please everyone. They've had a couple of years now to learn and adapt with this new expansion cycle, and I'm hoping that the delay on this expansion means they're aiming for a real home run this time. So yeah, I really hope those teasers are for new elite specs because that would be fantastic for the game. New classes, I would love it, but I'm not holding my breath for 3 at once. Most of all, I want this next expansion to blow us all away and get the whole community back on the hype train because honestly, I still love this game and I want to see it succeed. MMOs in general might not hit the same as they used to for me, but I still find myself caring about Guild Wars 2 after all of these years. Click here if you want to hear more about my own journey into Guild Wars 2 and how I got started.